one day in May was taken ill and died. And after she was dead, the will of course was read by the lawyer as we all stood by his side. To my brother it was found she had left £100, the same to my sister I declare. But when he came to me, the lawyer said I see Granny.
July 24th, 2009. We're delighted to be in the home of Howard Augustine Hanks, my uncle, my esteemed uncle, here in Asequa, Idaho. Howard is the fourth child of Augustine Leo and Olive Jane, isn't it?
Olive Jane Abrams.
Abrams.
Thanks.
Described here as an Edwards. Have you ever been to the Edwards homestead in Indiana?
No.
They were the regal ones in the community.
They were?
Yes. Your mother describes you here as a farm boy. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, that's all that I've ever done.
And you also mentioned before we went on camera, you look more like your dad than any of your siblings. Follically and, I don't know, the mannerisms. Do you consider that a compliment?
Yes. I admired my dad.
Why don't you talk about where that admiration came from?
Well, he was kind, dispassionate. He was always the same. And like I said at his funeral, he was without pretense. What you saw, you got.
There's almost a sense from all of the boys that what you saw is what you got. Sometimes what you saw needed a little tweaking or editing, but it was pretty straightforward and honest.
Oh yeah, you knew where you stood, and you didn't. Nobody argued with that. If he said what to do, well, you did it. I tried to box him when I was about 17, and my dad was a fighter.
How long did that last?
Oh, well, I don't know. 3 or 4 minutes, he stood there and beat me to death with his left hand and laughed. And I didn't lay a glove on him, I don't think.
Was it that high-pitched laugh that got deep, or was it just the surface one?
He laughed. Well, it wasn't like like I've heard him, I always, well, at his funeral, I said he's pealing laughter.
Pealing laughter.
And your joyous song will be forever with us. And this is probably one of the things I remember most. He sang, and my neighbor said that he'd never seen him without a light in his eye and a smile on his face.
Song in his heart probably as well.
Yeah, he got up early, and he was going out to check the water one night about 6, 7 o'clock, walking out, and the Mexican beat horde was coming in. And when the next morning when the beat horde came, my dad was just coming in. He wanted to know if he stayed up all night or what.
Your dad was described by several people as just an extremely hard worker.
Yeah, if he wasn't hurting, well, he wasn't accomplishing anything, I think.
Do you think he found his definition in work or in farm work, or?
Well, no, not necessarily. He was on the school board, and he was on the fair board. And he was president of the
PCA?
PCA for 20 years, most all the time I could remember.
The girls all talk about accompanying him to funerals when he sang so many times. I mean, I've heard the figure drop to 2,000 to 3,000 funerals. Is that extravagant in your mind?
No, it seemed like he went once or twice a week. It was common. In the afternoon, he'd be gone to a funeral.
It's a lot of singing.
He was a kind of a tearjerker. When he'd sing, why, the women would maybe openly weep.
So is that how we measure?
Well, he hit the chord. Helen had the same quality in her singing.
Ironically, growing up, you were always the sound of the Hankses that I knew as a child.
The what?
The sound of the Hanks family, because Morgan was gone, you know, and you were the male voice. Richard, I don't think, sang as much as you did publicly, and you'd sing Jerusalem, number of the
Holy
religious
City,
songs, yeah,
Did
the
you?
Holy City.
Well, Richard sang, and he could sing parts and things, but when he was on his mission to Hawaii, he got that Hawaiian way of singing. Instead of using full voice, I don't know, he kind of, how you describe it with the ukulele, and strum that ukulele in, you know, high-pitched voice, and he never did really use his voice. I didn't think that his capacity.
Tell me about memories of your mom and where she fits in your thinking.
Well, I guess I idolized my mother too. She was totally dedicated to her kids, to her family. She gave us things, poetry and music and things that few kids get. She tried to give me piano lessons, and finally she gave up. She said I got mad at the dotted quarter. But she was getting pretty irritated sometimes. And this is one thing that your brothers have said, that
I took piano lessons from her too.
and you realize how many of the kids that she gave piano lessons to, which I don't think was really appreciated, because they're looking at it from the viewpoint of a like teenager or something that was forced to do something they didn't want to do.
Compelled rather than chose.
And when you think that of all the ones she tried to give lessons to and help, she was criticized, I think, for a lack of patience. But then I don't know how you could teach piano and be patient.
How could she raise 8 kids and be patient?
But she started home evenings when I was a kid. We, one of our favorite things was she'd read us. She's the only one that I ever knew that could read O. Henry out loud. And she read us the books that she thought we ought to have. She could make him live better than if you were reading it yourself. And
she was always described as a great teacher.
Well, she was. And yet she lacked some confidence in herself. She didn't show it, but and when she got up with doing things, why, she had all the confidence in the world. But she had kind of a low self-image in a way. But she.
Ironic too. Is there a thought of a cantata or a Christmas concert without your mom doing that for years and years?
She was Star Wars social director. Yeah, about all the plays and things that were put on, she did. And my memories of Christmas were when my dad was bishop and mother put on the plays and things. And of course, she used a lot of her kids a lot because she could control them, I guess.
She knew they could sing too.
So, I remember the Christmas and the candy, and that was one of our big parts of Christmas, was going to the Christmas Eve party at the ward. And that's something that I miss even now. Our ward doesn't do.
Let's shift gears. You graduate from high school. You go to college, what, briefly?
Yeah, I went the winter quarter after I graduated from high school, and then I came home and went to work. And then the next year I went spring quarter or fall quarter, and I joined the Air Force.
So you were in the Air Force during the war?
Well, I joined the Air Force, and they washed me out of flight training because of my fluctuating blood pressure. And so they put me in the medical services. I became a veterinary technician, food inspector, during the war.
Did were all always stateside then?
No, I was in the AFPAC, or Armed Forces Pacific Headquarters Company, MacArthur's Headquarters Company, worked in the food depot. And
This picture of you as a soldier is probably one that'll live in infamy. I mean, young, bright, his future looks like it's all in front of him. What would you tell him now looking back?
well, I wouldn't take anything for the experience, but it'd be a pretty hard job to get me back in.
How much did your brother Morgan's influence in World War II affect you, and what do you think it did to the family?
Well, I don't know, because I went to the service before he did.
You were? Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I didn't know what was going on, only, just some mention of him in a letter, but there wasn't anything he could tell you because of the censorship. You couldn't write anything that indicated where you were or
What you were doing?
yeah. So till after he came home, it was interesting that his experiences, and I'm pleased that he was as functional as he was, as good a soldier as he was.
How much did your foreign experience influence your thinking and your experience in the military?
Well, I was going to be a veterinary. Fact is, I had my acceptance to Kansas State Vet School, and when I was in the Army, and they canceled all of the acceptances and sent us overseas. And, it just, I guess, made up my mind that I didn't want to work for the public.
You always have to work for yourself.
I've held one job as far as getting a wage. I worked for New Ida potato processing plant for a couple of weeks.
Was that 2 weeks too long, or?
Well, it was all I wanted. And I worked a lot harder away from there, but
Did you need to get across the river to have your own identity?
no,
To farm out here? Or?
I didn't look at it that way. We were just looking for a farm, and Dad had been to a PCA board meeting or a loan meeting, and he came home and he said Arlo Montgomery was going to take us out and show us some land. And so he loaded us up and took us out on the desert, and there wasn't anything out there. It had been.
So you really are one of the founding.
Well, as the first
community.
one out there, Richard and I were the first ones out there. Fact is, they're supposed to be bringing that up tonight at the stake for 4th or 24th celebration.
As a result, almost you and Richard are always mentioned in the same sentence. Sometimes, just because you're in the same community. And
Well, we're the Hanks boys, and Richard says, well, we'll be the Hanks boys till we're 90. Because
So
we
how
travel
how
together.
many more years do you have to go?
4. But we travel together, and the guys say, well, we were the two really big men they knew. And we had some legends about our ability to lift and do things. It was,
You're manly men.
well, we picked up things. I was accused of coming along the highway, and the neighbor gal had a flat tire, so I held the car up in the air while she...
Is it true?
Hardly. But Richard was loading fertilizer, 80-pound bags of fertilizer. The truck bed was up about 3.5, 4 feet, and he was putting them 5 high on the top of the truck from the ground. We had a couple of black guys helping us, and they were bug-eyed.
They knew not to mess with you.
Well, it was, I don't know, we never had to dispute my right-of-way. So I don't know.
And Richard, probably the biggest hands ever put on a human being.
Biggest what?
hands.
Oh,
Fingers.
yeah, he was the one that functioned anyway. No, I think Robert Wadlow had bigger hands. He was an 8-footer.
Howard, you're born just after my mother. Talk to me about my mother's influence and the way you interacted. She's been transcribing journals that said my mother taught you how to crochet or knit. So.
Well, I learned to crochet a little. I don't think I ever did much sewing, but I didn't do much crocheting either. But
They made washcloths.
yeah, well, I have to tell you this one incident when I don't remember just how old we were, 8 or 9, and Richard Morgan and I, and we didn't want to go to bed. And so Mother wrapped up an onion and put a face on it and gave each one of us an onion wrapped in a dish towel to take to bed. But Beth was shy and she didn't get away. I remember her hiding under the table. The fact is, she was under there more than once. But she stayed in the house, and Barbara worked outside.
Well, Barbara was a tomboy, in her own description.
Well, I never did class her as a tomboy. She worshipped Dad.
Now, did you ever learn how to milk a cow?
Me? I avoided that. My sister-in-law once, when they were up to visit, they always thought I was mean to the animals. I offered to kill their dog a few times. The cow was about a quarter of a mile away down at the far end of the pasture. And I went out with a stool and a milk bucket. She went out to watch me, and I yelled, and the cow's head came up, and here she came on the gallop, and did a cow horse stop in front of me, and I just sat down. I didn't have to move. I just sat down, and then she turned around and licked my shoulder. She said, "Why, she likes you." And so it's. But I've lived around the animals all my life, and this anthropomorphism is a bunch of baloney. The people that they treat the animals like they're siblings, and if they're in the way, I kick them out. So I don't. Had one friend that he had his cow cost him about $30,000, and she stepped on his foot. Now, sweetheart, get off my foot.
Sweetheart. You probably would have said something a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, is that?
Is that
Nick?
It is interesting that you have this orchard now, and watching you transplant and nurture the trees. Where'd you learn that?
Well, just from the literature. Richard gave me a Stark catalog when we were down here after we bought this place, and the trees kind of captivated me, so we ordered a half a dozen of them. And then I got that old disease of just one more tree.
How many trees are you up to now?
I don't know, I haven't counted them all. There's about 40 different varieties of apples, and there's probably over 100 trees.
I've heard you've even dabbled in apple cider in the ancient art.
Yeah, I've got a cider press out there. Last time we pressed it, we did 200 gallons.
The terrible thing is for an aficionado of apple cider from the East, like I am, to not know that somebody's dabbling in the ancient science here in Idaho.
Well, this is not orchard country. The prediction is that you get a crop once every 5 years because of the spring frost. And,
sometimes you need a frost in the fall to bring the flavor to the apples too.
If you saved them all, there would be so many you'd have to thin them, and most orchards do thin. But I'm afraid to thin because if then there's a frost, you don't get anything. But I thought, well, the trees were loaded with blooms, and there'd be lots of fruit. but somehow the weather took care of that. It's kind of interesting, the west side of the tree has more fruit than the east side. Usually it's the other way
This year?
around.
The
So,
west side of the tree? Well, I heard a secret, the wind probably blows this way.
Well, it
Got more
goes-
protection from the west.
if you're spraying down there, the wind changes every 10 seconds.
Now, can you grow potatoes successfully?
Oh, yeah. I'll have to dig you a few down there. I got some red ones.
Already?
You can grow potatoes about anywhere here in Idaho.
Well, I'm just making sure that Howard's following the family tradition.
Oh,
Well, I have my own tradition, I guess, but I just was interested. I found out, you know, there are about 10,000 cultivars of apples. There's hardly any apples that are planted in an orchard that aren't grafted
And
because they don't breed true. And I think they said the Johnny Gold apple was one out of about 10,000.
Because I've seen you graft, and that is an old ancient art.
Well, yeah, it's been around since before.
Christ, yeah.
there's some, now, there's certain rules with grafting. You can't just graft any tree to any tree. That's
Oh no, they've got to be in the same family. You can sometimes graft pears to apples, or vice versa, but see, we use a,
Apricots and peaches or something.
well, you can graft it onto a plum. Usually they use a plum root, or, well, you can use a peach root, but the ones that I've tried are plums.
If you were giving advice to somebody like him, are you married yet, Nick?
I am married with
Yeah.
3 kids.
Well, good start. I've actually heard descriptions of your life as not exactly turning out happily ever after at times like you planned. And,
What do you mean, my divorce?
well, that was a defining moment for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's worse than losing him by death.
And
I don't hide it or apologize for it. I try to use it as a way to teach people or to a way to look at things.
I never needed a divorce. Really how much I know.
Let's see, I used to go to the singles, and I was sitting down on the sidelines of the dance once in Ogden, and a lady came in and sat down by me, and she says, "You look like a nice guy, what's wrong with you?"
I wonder how you responded.
Well, I don't know whether you want that on.
A little salty?
Yeah.
Too salty.
She said, "Well, I wouldn't dare go with you." And I says, "Well, what makes you think your morals are any better than mine?" And she wanted to know what I did, and I said I was a farmer, and she says, "A hick, huh?" Well, I've known more city hicks than I have rural hicks.
Yeah.
So,
Curious. Tell me how you met your wife, Melva.
well, she just chased me all over.
She chased you?
No, when the
Usually
first
it's the other way around.
Yeah, no, the first time, or when my friend got divorced the same time, and we went to the singles the first time, and we pulled the collar up around her ears and sneaked in. You know, and Melba was single. She lost her husband. He was doing some church service, working on a grain bin they had out of Malta, and the grain bin and collapsed on he and his brother and killed him. And so she'd been single about 5 years. And she was taking the tickets at the dance was when I met her, and they just had a mixer and I danced with her. And it just, you know, went from there. But we dated for 5 years.
Did you sing your way into her heart, or how'd you do it?
You'll have to ask her.
Oh, that's a subtle one.
But she was a classy looking gal. She had I don't know how to explain it, kind of an angelic look. She just had that almost an ethereal aura about her. And, I was talking to my neighbor from out on the desert, and he was saying how his wife just fit his needs. And he said, when I first saw Melba, that's when we first got married, he says, how I wondered how old Harold got hurt.
And?
I told him I appreciated old Harold. And so that's how I kind of introduced myself to him sometimes. I had to laugh about that.
Tell me the challenges. Are there challenges you faced in growing older and getting to the point now where you've lost 3 siblings?
Well, actually, I don't miss them. Like Richard says, well, you never see me that much. I was happy to see Marion go. And we thought, well, after Morgan died, well, he came and got her. And she, we were there right about the time she died. I was thinking I was in there, but Ed had her bathed and taken care of, and Ed had gone into the bathroom, and when he came out, she was gone. And the only indication that there was a struggle was her bottom lip was kind of curved like this, and I had Jolene on her finger around her lip and straightened it out. And, but
Us grandkids, we were over there at Ed Marion's all the time.
well, she was.
We probably knew him. We probably knew him.
He was a family favorite, because that's where everybody went. And she made a fuss over the kids. They were
Oh yeah.
pumpkins or something all the time.
Oh, she was always kissing us. I remember a year or two. Oh, probably was a year before. She started having problems. She'd always call me Nicky Boo and
Yeah.
come try to give me kisses and hugs. And
The interesting part of that, you had such an affectionate sister, yet affection wasn't openly demonstrated in the family, was it?
No, I don't recall Dad ever saying I loved you or anything.
Really?
I went to a show with him a few times, and if there was a tender scene, why you'd look over and you'd hear him laugh, and you'd look over and there'd be tears running down their face. They didn't show emotion that way very much. And, I guess maybe we tried to compensate for it with our own families a little bit.
You think you did a better job in that regard?
Well, yeah, mother teased us a lot, and I was the straight-haired one.
The what?
I was the one with the straight hair, and I don't know.
you're more serious than the others.
Yeah.
Well, there's your angel right
Oh, we
there.
got
you.
you. Well, thank you.
You've just about been celestialized.
No kidding. Oh, gee.
Melba, the question came up whether Howard sang his way into your heart.
Yes,
Did he ever
did.
sing for you?
Yes.
Really?
Huh? I critiqued him all the time. And
Did you? It's a good thing he finally had a woman in his life that could critique without.
Well, everybody puts down with Lola, but I don't like that.
I didn't know it was her.
I
dad,
don't.
so-
She was
that's...
a very caring person. She had some problems, and
Lola's your.
First wife.
first wife, and
See, and I never knew he was married before you. You're the only
Oh,
one I've
did
ever
you?
met.
Well, yeah, you were a little
well, it's
guy.
been 35
Yeah,
years or more.
Wow.
23,
but,
yeah, it's been 35,
But I'm-
about 38
Geez,
years.
35 years, maybe 34 years ago, did you ever think that things would ever stabilize or, that your life would
Well,
ever get back on a...
I didn't know whether
Footing.
that I could get beyond 20 years. But, we always marry baggage.
Oh, well, thanks.
Well, everybody has baggage, in other words.
Listen to that.
Idiosyncrasies.
How are you doing?
But it's
The question is who has the bigger trash can, you or her?
We were debating that yesterday. He said, what have I gotten into? And I said, yeah, what have I gotten into?
Well,
After 35
Melba
years.
and Howard and I were talking yesterday about the genealogy baggage that we carry on from family to family. What we inherit from our fathers or mothers or whatnot.
Yeah.
What would you say the Hanks, your kids inherited from you and your dad?
Oh, my good looks and my life.
Come on.
Of course.
Your laugh isn't nasal enough though, you know?
Well, I don't laugh like my dad.
Oh,
Yeah.
nobody did though.
No. You know, Grandpa Hanks, my grandpa.
You got that running.
Emmanuel.
Do you want to
yeah,
say
He kinda
Emmanuel.
lost his way, and
Well-
he was out there.
He had Parkinson's or Alzheimer's
Something,
or
well,
something.
you don't know whether it was senile dementia or whatever, but he run off all the time. And so Dad took him down in the granary and had a canvas cot down there, and he put a jug of water down there and then locked the door. From the outside, there was a 2x4 across the middle of the door, and I came by there, and there was a racket, and Grandpa had got the steel yard scales, the big scales, you know, with the notches in it, and he'd knocked the board off the door and was sawing away, and I yelled at Dad, and Dad came and he opened the door, and Grandpa said, if you first don't succeed, try again. He said, I think that damn bishop locked me in here. And Bishop Dad, and Dad sat down on that couch and he just laughed, and I didn't think he'd ever stop. It was,
The fact is, you tell the best story about your dad too in his older age. Why don't you tell it for the camera?
I don't know which one you're talking
The
about.
railroad tracks.
Oh, well, we could help you with that. We were going out, it was March and it was cold. And we were headed out home, and we were on the highway about a mile before the turnoff, and here this old guy was going down the railroad track pushing a bicycle. He had on an army coat, an old ragged army coat, and I told Mel that his kids ought to be ashamed of themselves. And then we realized it was Dad.
He was picking up cans
For
for Brian.
For David's boy, Brian. So, he was without, I can't think of the word now.
Kyle, he didn't.
Pretense, he just,
Is it ever troubled you at all the way what happened when your mother passed away and he married fairly soon afterwards and married into a bad, not a perfect situation by any stretch?
well, we had to help him out, we double dated.
Oh, my, that could traumatize 2 generations.
No, that's true.
That'd be tough.
Yeah.
Sitting in the back seat and there were these little old eyes sitting back there.
Well, I wasn't too thrilled about it. But,
I don't know if I could do something like that, because my mom and dad divorced, and my
Yeah.
dad's getting remarried actually today at 3 o'clock. And I'm just,
you
No,
don't
you
think
know.
you can double date with your dad?
no way.
Well,
But it's different, I don't have a relationship. I could probably double date with my mom.
He would still be a speck on the strength
It would
side.
probably, yeah, but my mom has a good sense of humor, and she understands me, and I can joke and everything, and I just I never really had that click with my father that I had with my dad.
well, it wasn't like a planned date, we just went to the singles. And we
Sure.
picked him up.
But in your mind, when he did marry, then left her and went back and all the up and down, didn't change any of the feelings you had for your father?
Oh, no, he sang in the barber shop
Is that-
chorus with Stan and Dad and I guess I was out someplace and I stopped. It was about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and I knocked on the door, and Elizabeth wouldn't come to the door. She was afraid. The lights were all on, and so I left, and Dad came home a little while after that, and the cops met him. She had called the cops, and he walked into that.
Oh man.
But When you get that age, I guess you get lonesome, I don't know.
My grandpa Ed, he sure is he's a lonesome guy. He's very lonesome.
I'm glad to hear him go fishing like he did.
Oh, yeah, he had a ball.
Well, he went fishing with him a few times. There's 3 young bucks going down there to the fish hatchery.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jaggerman?
Yeah, I remember me and Joey, you guys would drop off and say, yeah, we got about 60 fish here for you.
Yeah, like you're really
It
working
lasts
hard to
a
catch
minute.
those things.
Well, I sat on my shop stool on the cement pad and fished and took them off and everything without getting up. You know, it was.
Don't break the sweats fishing, huh?
Yeah, they'd always drop 'em off to my mom's house. They'd have 2 big buckets clear full of like 60 fish. Me and my brother had to gut them or fillet them. And no matter what we were doing, we had to.
You were
had to do it.
traumatized by that too, then.
Oh, yeah, no.
Well, Melba learned how to fillet, and that's,
The day,
Was there ever time to play growing up though? That
yeah,
much?
yeah.
Did
Even
you-
even out in the beach field. Richard and Morgan and I had to sit out there for an hour just talking and
Not thinning or
just
hauling?
sitting in the middle of the beach field and putting in our time, but we went to the river at night. We had old Toots and at Shetland, and we had hooked on. Dad made us a buggy. He took the wheels, the big wheels off a buggy, and put an old car wheel without tires on it,
Mhm.
and we went all over in that thing.
Did you ever get to be the big billy goat and little Billy Goat Gruff?
No, I was a middle-sized billy goat.
he was a big one.
Morgan was
always a good one.
It seemed like Helen was the troll.
Terrible.
Well, I don't think we had a bad childhood. We played Run Cheapy Run, and we greased the big long ladder from the haystack to the barn, and with beet pulp, and we'd slide down that on the hay into the loft.
This is where Uncle David lived now.
Yeah, the barn was there.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I remember playing up there as a kid, and we get hollered at, we
Well,
get yelled at for getting up
Howard,
there.
part of the reason I'm doing this is my mom's 90th birthday's coming up. I wonder if you could look in the camera and give a birthday greeting. If you wanted, you could even sing. Whatever would be appropriate, I don't.
maybe I need to get conditioned for it. I don't know.
A glass of water.
Happy birthday, Beth. It's your 90th birthday. I didn't think you'd make it.
Sing her a song.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Beth. Happy birthday to you.
He's good, isn't he? What are they gonna, any favorites, songs that, of all the times you've sung in public?
Oh, I think, I don't know. A friend of mine turned out to be one of my better ones, I think. My voice has dropped a little. I don't sing as high as I used to, and I haven't sung for a while. The Little Gray Home in the West, some of the, Dad's old songs.
That's a classic that's the last time I've heard him sing was that song.
And I see, I was trying to.
Capital Ship, I guess Morgan could
Well,
sing
that was
faster.
Morgan's favorite, and I didn't take care of that
Danny
much
Boy.
for it.
All you guys sing?
They all sing.
No, I mean,
Do
your
you?
kid,
You couldn't grow up in Hanks without knowing the music.
Well, that's what we used to do, when my dad's family got together, when they came up with it, we'd have a song fest, and Ray Mitchell says, he could hear us a mile away and everything.
The interesting thing is, in my mind, the Old Armchair is the Hanks song, more defining. It's traced back to early England, and your grandfather brought it over when he came.
Well, see, my Aunt Gladys, she was a lot like Dad. She always had a sparkle. she was the life of the party when she was there, and she and Dad sang duets when they were younger, and she sang that, and there's several others that.
Do you remember the Abrams at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember my grandpa and Grandma Abrams. I went down and stayed with them a day or two and got homesick. Aunt Mary was a great lady. I mean, and Uncle Will, I was supposed to be like Uncle Will.
Buried in Kaysville.
Yeah, and Uncle Raleigh. Uncle George, he came to stay with us once when the folks were gone. When they got home, we were all reaching and acting like